Radha, everyone. A spiritual good morning to one and all, and welcome to our Bhagavad Gita study class. I'm going to hand it over to Mummy first for our opening prayer, and then we'll get into today's content. Thank you.
Radhe Radhe, very warm welcome to our Bhagavad Gita study session. Let's start with a prayer to Guru, Lord Krishna and Radha Rani. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gopikam Paramam Shodham, Ladinim Shakti Rupinim. And over to you, Gagan.
Thank you, Mummy. Once again, Radha Radha, everyone. And we are here for Bhagavad Gita study, what will end up being the concluding class for Chapter 7's Churn and Learn segment and series. So we'll get back to the usual format for Churn and Learn. We'll ask you a few questions prior to showing a video clip by Swamiji. As always, for those initial questions, we'll just collect a couple of responses each and not discuss any what might end up being the correct answers. Then watch the video. Hopefully all of you can take notes as you go along and then discuss some additional questions, solidify everything, and tie it back to something in Chapter 7. All right, Dilji, good morning. Radha Radha.
Okay. I'll say God resides one place in the heart of everyone.
All right, wonderful. Yep, we'll take that down. God resides in the heart of everyone. Thank you, Dilji. And we'll spend a few more seconds. If anyone else wants to volunteer any additional thoughts. Annapurnaji, Radha Radha.
Yes. God resides in the hearts of the people who always listen to whose ears are like ocean, where they listen to God's stories and think of God all the time, and He resides in their hearts. Purpur or something. Radhe Radhe.
All right, thank you, Annapurnaji. Radhe Radhe. So we've got a couple of answers from Daleji and Annapurnaji. Suryaji first. Radhe Radhe, good morning.
I joined a little late, but I heard the questions and I'm just thinking about the answer. He is the Sarvakarna Karnam. So, he's basically he's the supreme controller.
Mm-hmm.
So he should be doing, again, I'm trying to justify his duties. He is creating, maintaining, and inhalating.
Got it. Okay. So we'll take down maintaining as the next step, as you're probably suggesting, after he creates the world. Thank you, Suryaji. And Sudhakarji, good, I guess it's afternoon or evening at your end. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. What I know, after God is creating the universe, I think he will also enter into this, as a Paramatma in each and every living being. And that is similar to the one I think other devotees mentioned, maintaining the creation. So to maintain the creation, he enters as a Paramatma and gives the energy. So this is what my perception.
All right. Thank you, Sudhakarji. Yep, I like that. You said he enters the world also, and you mentioned Paramatma, you mentioned hearts. So yeah, we'll store that. And let's also quickly hear from Daleji. Radhe Radhe.
So I haven't had a chance to study Chapter 7 for quite a while. And so I'm not sure what the answer is in Bhagavad Gita, but coming from Christian background, after God created the world on the seventh day, he rested. So let's see if there's any connection between the two scriptures.
All right. Okay. Good to hear that, Dilji. Yep, we'll note that down as well.
Is it Brahman and then Paramatma and then Bhagavan, from the smallest to the big?
Okay, so you said Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. All right, we'll store that. Thank you, Sudhakarji. And next up, Bilji. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. I would say the same order and add that if we're looking at the from the aspect of the Shaktis, that Brahman manifests no Shaktis. I'm not sure about Paramatman, and certainly Bhagavan manifests all the Shaktis, although Krishna manifests a few more than Ram.
Got it. Okay, we'll note that down as well, Bilji, and thank you for mentioning the reference to the manifestation of Shaktis. Again, as you all take notes as we get to the video very shortly, that'll be something to keep in mind. Thank you, Bilji. And Suryaji, very quickly, your response?
It's Paramatma is and then Brahman and Bhagavan. Just to Bill's point, I don't think Krishna is every pervading, so he's no less in any other form, but he has different roles. So Paramatma would be just Upadishta Hanumanta. So his role is just listening and noting down and sanctioning. But rest all opulences and powers he would be using, or he has in any form.
Got it. Okay, we'll store that down as well, Suryaji. Thank you so much. So yeah, let's get into the video segment. And right before that, I want to just remind everybody about the flyer. Hopefully you all saw. Yeah, hopefully everyone can see the flyer. Do look at the images, of course, but also the question at the bottom left. Keep that in mind. Hopefully intriguing, but also something to reference when we get through the video segment. So what's your shelter? Shake, milk on the left, or sharbat on the right. With that, we'll get into the video.
So some of the people have this religious understanding. They accept that God is a creator. But they believe he created the world. And he's outside the world. He's looking, what's happening in my world now? That is one understanding of God. However, the Vedas say, not only did he create the world, he pervaded his whole creation as well. O king, is there anybody in your country that can transform grass and hay and chickpeas and banana peels into milk? The king was silent. The sadhu said, your question was, who is God? The answer is, God is he who has created this cow, which eats grass and creates milk for human consumption. No human being can do this. The creator of this cow is God. The sadhu explained, just like the butter is everywhere in the milk, God as well is everywhere in this world. So that all-pervading form of God, our scriptures have repeated again and again. So the material energy, Maya, God, and the soul are all in the same place. You talk about being separated from God. We are separated from God since endless lifetimes. Well, the fact is, we can never be separated from him. He is eternally and incessantly with us. Why eternally with us? Because he is sitting inside us.
Hopefully lots to learn from that video. A lot of different points Swamiji mentions, as well as questions we'll now talk about very shortly, which he addresses as well. So hope you all got notes along the way.
Just a small comment before we get into the questions. In our classes, many times we have mentioned that in Swamiji's book, okay, there is an introduction chapter, okay. Right in the beginning, there is an introduction chapter. And in that chapter, Swamiji has discussed some of the very important terms. And this God term is one of the very important terms. So basically, in all our Vedic scriptures, and including Bhagavad Gita, God refers to one supreme entity, that he is all-powerful, all-knowing, and omnipresent. He is the creator, maintainer, and dissolver of this creation. And he possesses innumerable contradictory attributes at the same time. He is near yet far. He is big yet small. He is formless yet possessing a form. He is without qualities yet possessing innumerable qualities. So now, how do we approach this supreme entity? So that is where these three names come up. Okay. So some people relate to him in his formless, all-pervading aspect. When he is formless, he is called Brahman. That means he is pervading in everything. As Swamiji mentioned, that he is a molecule, he is smaller than proton, electron. So only then he can be pervading in those very small things, right? Now, then there is the next form, which is called Paramatma. Paramatma, that form of God which is living in our hearts. So that is, it is again the same God, but it is known in three different ways. And the third one is Bhagwan. When that all-pervading God, he takes an avatar. He takes an avatar, he comes to this world, and in that form, he exhibits all and loads of his Shaktis. That is when we can really see him and we can really feel him. Okay. In previous classes, we did this example of the train coming, if you all remember. When the train is coming from far, we see only that light. When it comes little near, you see that there is something really big coming. And when it really stands in front of you, then you see all the different coaches and all. So this is the same way God is being compared to Brahman, Paramatma, and the third one is Bhagwan. So we have to remember, though it is all one supreme entity. With that, we'll get on to the questions, Gagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mummy. And good reminder from the class a couple of times ago with the train example and also the introduction in Swamiji's Bhagavad Gita text. Bilji, Radhe Radhe.
To contrast with the white milk it produces.
Absolutely right. Yep. Thank you so much, Bilji. Yep. Milk is white. So it was from the Sadhu and King's discussion where the king pointed out to the Sadhu, well, it's not because it's the skin that comes out as milk, right? So that contrast of black and white to help really add on to that story of how milk is created before we all, of course, appreciate and understand that God is the creator. All right. Thank you, Bilji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. So the analogy is to say that he's pervading everywhere.
Yes, very well said, Suryaji. That means God is pervading everywhere. The way in milk, butter is everywhere. Okay, it is only we have to churn it. And same, how do we perceive God? When we churn our material senses and try to bring divinity in us, only then we can perceive that all-pervading God.
If God is everywhere, then he's non-different from anything around him. So always the expression I think in Swamiji's video was that he's always 10 inches away from whatever expression that we're looking at. So there's this expression Anuraniyan, Mahaturaniyan, he's smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest, like that. And I think that was Swamiji in very simple terms explaining how we can appreciate the fact that God really is everywhere. He's in absolutely everything. So he has to also be beyond everything.
Yes, absolutely right. Thank you so much, Daleji. Yep, he's all pervading, he's everywhere. So if he weren't smaller than the smallest, he wouldn't be in at least some object or entity, but then that would be a contradiction. Yep. And you've mentioned the use of the word anu, right? Tiny, we've talked about way back in the day, I think. So thank you for that reminder as well. All right. Looking at the chat window as well, we have Suryaji, yep, part of all living entities, non-living too. And Surendraji, Radha, yep, butter is the essence of churning, that bhakti, as Mummy was saying, churning bhakti, divinity. Yep. All right.
Why? Because there are so many species. So there is an elephant also, and there is an ant also. So God is an elephant also, God is an ant also. So he has to be then smallest, smaller than the smallest. Only then he can be present in all the living beings, in all the living entities. Just now, Swamiji, in the video, he gave an example that when we drink a glass of water, if we put sugar in it, we can perceive it is sweet. When we put salt in it, we can perceive it is salty. Same thing, we are saying that God is all pervading. Then why can't we perceive him? What is the reason?
And just to be clear here, so there are two reasons Swamiji gives. Here, we're looking for the one reason, which is assuming we are not at fault. So if we as humans, as souls, we are not at fault, then why can we not perceive God? So that's the one reason by Swamiji that we're looking for first.
Yeah, because, our body is made out of material, and God, God is divine. That is one thing that we cannot perceive. And also we have turned our back towards him. And we are completely, in ignorance of his presence, even though he lives right in us. We can perceive him because of our material body. Only with sadhana we can try to see him, just like there is butter in the milk. Only when you churn it, then you can get the butter. So sadhana is just like churning the milk. We have, that's the reason that we can't perceive him, even though he lives inside us and he gives us the consciousness to think about him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Annapurnaji. We'll store that and hear if there is any other response also from anyone. We'll get back to your responses very momentarily, Annapurnaji. You'll see how that ties into some upcoming questions as well. So again, the stress is on the fact that we're saying in the question, conveniently assuming that we are not at fault. Then why are we not able to perceive God? So quickly see if one other person would like to raise their hand.
Oh, kindly everybody notice that Gagan has given a twist to this question. The answers, Annapurnaji, you gave all very good, perfect. Now, the question Gagan has given a twist, and he's saying, assuming we are not at fault, then why?
Let's hear from Suryaji. Your thoughts, please. Radhe.
Limited senses. So our senses have limitations.
Okay, we'll store that as well. And I see a few similar messages in the chat window as well. Final one from Daleji, and then we'll reveal the answer. Daleji, Radhe.
One of the things that we might be lacking is his grace in order to perceive him. And so it's not our fault. We don't have his grace in order to have the divine perception to perceive him. We just have our material perception. So it's not our fault. It's our job, like Annapurna was saying, to do the sadhana so that if God does want to grace us, that we can see him, but it's up to him.
Okay, we'll store that as well, Daleji. Nice connection to some of the other responses as well. But again, along the similar lines, we have to put in effort, sadhana, get away from the material senses, get grace. But indeed, the answer here, remember, again, assuming we are not at fault, which again, just convenient for this question, it's actually related to what Bilji had alluded to early on in one of his pre-video question responses, and it's about the manifestation of Shaktis. So Swamiji said the first reason why we cannot perceive God is he's apparently everywhere, he's all-pervading, he's in our hearts. But because he's not manifesting all of his Shaktis or some of them, we don't get to perceive God. So please, everyone, do note that down. And again, this is convenient. This is us trying to shift the blame, apparently, that, well, because he's not manifesting his Shaktis, God is not, perceptible by us. So we're not at fault. That's apparently what this question is trying to suggest. But now we'll move on, of course, to the next question. In this video in particular, Swamiji has several analogies. We've already talked about the milk and the butter one. There's now another analogy he mentioned, and they had a nice visual also in the video where he describes something related to this thing where God is not manifesting all his Shaktis. That's why we cannot perceive God as one reason. All right, Dineshji, good morning. Radhe Radhe.
Good morning, Radhe Radhe. I think it's a powerhouse example that if the power is turned off from the powerhouse, everything is dark in everywhere in the whole city.
Okay, we'll take that as well. Yeah, that's a good response. The powerhouse, the storehouse of energy, and if that's turned off, then you won't be able to get the benefit of the energy. Thank you, Dineshji. There's one more that was even more specific, and they actually had, as I said, visuals. They had a video segment in that whole clip for it. So if anyone remembers, and if not, in a few seconds, I'll give a hint. Annapurnaji, Radhe Radhe.
I think somebody gave a hint in the...
Is this the analogy of a seed that he was talking about, that, seed has got leaves, fruit, flowers, roots, everything in it, but we cannot perceive anything. We just see it as a seed. Is that the analogy that you were looking for in my answer?
That's one of them as well. That's a good one that you reminded us about. Yep, the seed he mentions with, I think it's 150 branches, 400 aerial roots, 6,000 leaves, so many flowers. Yep. But if we see it only as a seed, then we don't know what it can or what it encompasses, right? So that is one good example too, Annapurnaji. Thank you. And as Mummy was saying, yes, we have a couple of chat responses which are the most specific correct answers. So Suryaji and I think Daleji as well. Yep. Fire, matchbox, right? Remember there was that visual of the matchstick and how there's the latent fire in it, but it has to be struck for that fire to be emanating from it. So that is the specific analogy by Swamiji here, talking about what is, the Shaktis not being manifested, which is why we cannot perceive.
Yeah, that Shakti is latent, okay? It's only we have to, like a matchstick, when we strike it, only then the flame will come. Otherwise, it has that Shakti, it has that power, but it is latent till we strike it. So similarly, for the next questions, we will get this, that when, only when God graces, only when we do sadhana, only when we do bhakti, and then finally God graces us, then only we can perceive God. Swamiji talked about. There was one question, when we are not at fault, why we cannot perceive God? That time the answer was that God is not manifesting all his Shaktis. Now, the question is little different. We are at fault, okay? Now, why cannot we? What is the reason? Why can't we perceive God?
So let's hear from Daleji. Radhe Radhe.
So I'm also reading the chat, and I think Swamiji mentioned three things, and I see already two are in the chat from Surya. She's saying that we're lacking the consciousness to perceive God. And from Bilji, also, he says we're lacking the devotion. And Swamiji also mentioned the grace. So it is in some senses our responsibility that we don't have the grace. Like I think it was Annapurna was saying that we have to do the sadhana, in order to purify ourselves, in order to receive the grace. So we're lacking three things, Swamiji said in the video: devotion, grace, and consciousness. This is what has separated us from God.
Yeah, it's a good all-encompassing summary there, Daleji. Yep. And if you go to backtrack a little bit, which is what you and others had said a few minutes ago, it's really the fact that God is divine, but our senses are material. Now, someone may say, well, God granted that to us, so it's not necessarily our fault. Yeah. If we had done that sadhana much earlier in a prior lifetime and gotten the grace of God, then indeed we wouldn't be at this current stage of fault with material senses. So even before all that devotion, the consciousness being in the right direction, the mind being pure, it's the fact that our senses are material, as Swamiji said. And that's where, as Mummy reminded us, the example of the sugar in the water or the salt in the water, or as Swamiji said, right, that jaundiced person who can't appreciate that perfect sharbat, which is also a form of God. God is everywhere in the sharbat, not just in that milk or the butter. That also is something that we cannot perceive or appreciate because we're trying to visualize or get, appreciation of something divine from senses that are material. So that's the source of all of that, the senses being material. All right. Next question. Dilji, is that a comment? Go ahead. Yep.
I just wanted to say thank you for making the connection between the sherbet and the milk, from the slide. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dilji.
Actually, what I notice, everybody has understood the real crux of the video. That is very clear. What all you are giving the answers, it is all perfect. The only thing is questions are step by step throughout the video. That is why, Daleji, whatever you said was all perfect. Now comes what many people answered earlier.
So let's hear from Sudhakarji. Radhe.
I will think of this lack of devotion and the grace of the God, our consciousness, you can say.
Mm-hmm. And can you elaborate a little bit? What about the consciousness specifically, if you think physically?
The consciousness is basically we don't believe or have a firm faith in the God is pervading everywhere. Even though we can say that we are turning back towards God, but God is everywhere. So the only difference is consciousness. Yes, if you have a consciousness, God is everywhere. I think you can, He can bestow grace to us so that we can see Him or He can see us. He can see us, but we can see Him or we can feel Him through His grace with the consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you, Sudhakarji. And the key phrase you mentioned there, which Swamiji says so many times in all his lectures, in his videos, and he always does the hand gesture as well, right? Our backs are turned towards God. And how can we do that? Physically, that doesn't make sense, right? He explained in the video. I think Daleji reminded us, or someone said, the Shanguli, right? God is 10 inches away always from creation, so to say, which seems contradictory because he's residing in our hearts. So it's not physically that we are, turned away from him, but it is our consciousness. Swamiji often tells us, right? He shows this way. Our backs in terms of consciousness are towards God. So that direction has to change. That approach has to be different. Yep.
And how does that approach change? Mm-hmm. Basically, by having trust and full faith in God. Be it sukh or dukh, be it sorrow or joy, any situation, we have to be equanimous and we have to understand that let's be in acceptance. God is everywhere. Whatever He is doing for us, whatever He is giving us, it is all for our good. So this is what we have to basically learn. Never complain. because he knows the best and he is bestowing us with whatever is best for us. So that will be our firm faith. Usually what happens when things are going good? Wow, it is God. God is great. It is only when things are not going good for us, we think, oh, why is he doing this to us? That is what we need to establish, a firm faith in God. That means then in our consciousness, we are not, our backs are not towards him. Then we are facing him. That is when our consciousness will be always having full faith in God.
We've covered several questions and responses today, several analogies by Swamiji. But as Mummy gave us that good summary from the physical book, the introduction section and talking about God, which this video also completely talks about. But the first aspect that is the crux of the video is Brahman, the all-pervading aspect. So now the question is, which verse of chapter 7 does this tie back to? And you all hopefully know where to search. It's probably close to the end. We were in the mid to late 20s in the verses the last time we met. We also said at the start of class, this will be the concluding class for chapter 7, the Churn and Learn series. So it should be relatively easier for you to find which verse it is.
I think Gagan gave a hint also that this is about the all-pervading fact about God. We did 3 categories, three names for God in different forms. We did Brahman, we did Paramatma, and we did Bhagavan. So towards the end of chapter 7, in one of the verses, Krishna is talking about Brahman. We have to find out that verse.
And I see Surya Ji has the answer in the chat window, so we'll keep it moving. It's indeed chapter 7, verse 29. So quickly, Mummy, if you wanted to say anything about that, and then we'll wrap up.
Jara marana mokshaya mam ashritya yatanti ye te brahma tad vidhu kritsnam adhyatmam karma chakhilam. So Krishna says, those who take shelter in me, striving for liberation from old age and death, come to know Brahman, the individual self and the entire field of karmic creation. That means that is when you fully understand all the 3 different names of God, that it is all-pervading, it is the one who is living in our heart, and it is the one who takes avatar and manifests lots of his Shaktis. So we have understood that God is one supreme entity, and we can see it in 3 different forms. That is what we have learned. Over to you, Gagan.
Yeah, that's it. Indeed, that's a great way to conclude our full series for chapter 7, the original, sequence and format with the verses one by one, and then this, Churn and Learn series the past few months. So again, everybody can go take a look at chapter 7, verse 29 and 30. 30 introduces us very briefly to 3 terms that will come up now next week when we embark on our chapter 8 journey. So we look forward to all of you being there. I'm going to quickly send one link in the chat window in the spirit of Thanksgiving. There's a small video, just about 3+ minutes. I encourage everyone to take a look at that. It's about a prayer for gratitude with a question in it as well. I think Daleji has responded to that in the past, but please do take a look if you can. And it'll be in the slides as well that you can get from the community portal page. For those of you joining us for recitation, see you in 2 hours, starting a new chapter there as well. So we'll look forward to seeing some of you there.
So we are going to start a new chapter in Bhagavad Gita recitation today. Do join us. And next week, we are going to start chapter 8 in our Bhagavad Gita study session, whereby we'll be learning about Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhiyagnya. That is what Krishna tells us these terms in the last verse of chapter 7. With that, we take your leave and thank you very much for joining us. Let's take blessings from Radharani. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Jai Shri Radhe.